710 KORV TalkBack. Dr. Lawrence Gelman, home of the Iron Microphone, 1-800-580-8255, 1-800-580-TALK. Streaming live on KURV.com and my website, TalkBackOnline.com. What is this nonsense on Fox News? Remote controls are so great. Turn off the garbage. We're here to educate those who are willing to be educated. Tell them the truth in a world full of lies. Country's run by a bunch of fascist gangsters, and we think they're benevolent. Labor force statistics. All we get fed by the government is a stream of lies, continuous lies. Let's see. What is the latest unemployment supposed to be? Who cares? According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is a government agency, we're looking at total population, civilian non-institutional, adult population, and employed, unemployed, not in labor force, etc. So, looking at the numbers, of course, they always come with the numbers that the unemployment rate is going down, as if that means anything. Of course, it means absolutely nothing. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the civilian non-institutionalized population in the United States since Barack Obama became president has gone from 235,801,000 to 246,381,000, so an increase of about 10.5 million people. So the non-institutionalized population has gone up by 10.5 million people, which means there should have been, conservatively speaking, an increase of at least 7 million people in the labor workforce. Let's take a look at the labor workforce. Labor workforce, since Barack Obama became president, has gone up about 3.5 million. So the non-institutionalized population has gone up nearly 11 million. The civilian labor force has gone up by 3 million, 3.5 million. On the other hand, since Barack Obama was in president, the number of people who've left the labor workforce has gone from 81 million to 91 million. So an increase of 10 million in 5 years. If we go back to the George Bush reign, in the 8 years that George Bush was president, the numbers that left the workforce were averaged 1 million a year, or 8 million. So in 5 years, Barack Obama has managed to put 2 million more people out of the labor workforce than George Bush did in 8 years. So George Bush, there was 1 million people leaving the labor workforce per year, and that could be simply those who are age 65 or over. On the other hand, Barack Obama is putting 2 million people out of the labor workforce every single year. Good old Barack Obama. Let's take a look at some other interesting statistics. 143 million. The number of people employed today, you have to go back to 2005 to have the same number of people that are employed today. Actually, there are less people employed in October than in September. Good job, Barack Obama. So there's less people working today than in 2006. Though in 7 years we added 20 million people to the population, of which at least 14 million are ought to be in the labor force. So, and he's added essentially nothing. But amazingly enough, since he became president, the unemployment rate has declined from nearly 10% to 7%, though no more people are working. How does that pan out? How does that work? Because the government lies to you all the time. So we have in the United States, we've only added 1 million people to the labor workforce in the last 6 years, when there's been at least 12 million people eligible. What should be the real unemployment rate? Well, the real unemployment rate, I guess, ought to be, the number of unemployed ought to be 21 million, which gives us an unemployment rate of about 9%. Look at it, we can see that the shift of people from the unemployment column has not been, I mean, okay, if you look at it, the number of unemployed in 2009, Barack Obama, King Barack Obama's first year of reign, by the end of 2009, after 1 year of Barack Obama, there were 14 million people unemployed, 154 million people in the labor force, 139 people actually working, 81 million people out of the labor force. You go to today, or October of 2013, we find while the number of unemployed has declined from 11,800,000 to from 14,800,000 to 11,200,000, or a decline of 3.5 million, that the number of people in the labor force has increased by only 1 million, but the number of people that are now out of the labor force has increased by 10 million. So the shift has been towards I quit, and that, I think, is America's new motto: I quit. And to prove that to be true, Barack Obama's latest initiative is to increase yet again unemployment compensation, the duration of unemployment compensation. Now, what happens when you reward people for not working? They don't work. Oh, that's what we have now in our and so, but we're also superficial. We're also superficial in this country. Superficial. No one ever goes into depth. For example, we can take many examples. We talk about the Roe v. Wade decision, just to take something out of the hat. We're always talking about the Roe v. Wade decision and whether something is in compliance or non-compliance, and whether it's going to be ratified again or overturned or whatever. But when was the last time you ever heard anyone discuss the Roe v. Wade decision itself? The answer is never. I've never, ever heard the decision actually discussed. The decision itself. With all the talk about the Roe v. Wade decision, you think that some airhead, whether it's Katie Couric or Greta Van Susteren, you would think that somebody would at least discuss the decision itself. What comprises the decision? What is in the decision? What is in the Roe v. Wade decision? What does the Roe v. Wade decision actually say? And that is never done. Now, Fred, has that ever, in your experience, has that ever been done in your long history as a radio producer? Ta-da! Wake up, Fred. It's never done. Never, and that's everything, right? They never discuss the. You have these idiots thinking that the Affordable Care Act is going to provide free health care to everybody. Well, health care is not free. Health care is a product. The same way that somebody has to build an automobile, it's not free. Somebody has to create a healthcare product. I'm telling you, go down to these individuals who have been brainwashed and actually believe that the government ought to provide them with free health care. What does Barack Obama know about health care? What does Michelle Obama know about health care? Oh, she knows about spending money, buying Louis Vuitton purses and spending millions and millions of dollars, taking her friends around on junkets around the world. The millions of dollars they're going to spend on her birthday because of all the great things that she's done for the United States. So Marie Antoinette Obama, what has she ever done of any consequence? This is a country of bobbleheads. A country of bobbleheads bobbling around with their nods in assent, agreeing to whatever Barack Obama says as if he were a divinity. Well, I think among a certain percentage of the population, they do consider him a divinity. Apparently, those who vote in the Democrat Party, for the most part, consider Barack Obama, if not God, at least a king. I wish Gallup or some other useless organization would do a poll and say, how many would you like Barack Obama to be president for life? I would say 25% of the population would want that. At least 25% would want that. Maybe more. So this is the end result of a nation founded on the principle of individual liberty and freedom. We've ended up in a situation of where we yearn to be subjects of a king. If only the king were a little smarter than the one we have now. I don't understand why people feel this need to remain in the womb of authority. Why we feel safe with a government that does nothing but steal, rape, and plunder. Our government is responsible for the deaths of many, many thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. Many our own people. Many maimed for life in order to fulfill the fantasies of individuals such as Barack Obama and George Bush. Why do the American people need to sacrifice their health and their lives in order to fulfill the fantasies of those who would be king, whether the name is Barack Obama or George Bush or Bill Clinton? How is it that we allow ourselves to be so easily brainwashed? Well, I imagine that's the case because of human psychological makeup in which we want to be protected by someone or some entity which is powerful to protect us from what? Well, essentially, our government exists to protect us from other governments, which is kind of ironic, don't you think? That the only reason our government exists is because other governments exist? Wouldn't it be, we'd all be better off without government? What does government do for you? It takes away your money. Now, if you're a parasite, you're all for government because only government can sustain parasitism. If not for government taking from the producer and giving to the non-producer would disappear. But government is there to make sure that the homeless get money and the foodless get money and the healthcareless get money, and that the educationless people have a place to go, even though called school, though it is not, of course, a place of education. It is a place of indoctrination. So that's the situation that we have in this country. We have a fascist dictatorship that the majority of the voting population prefers to freedom. There's no surprise there. Most of the world lives with fascist dictators, regardless of what they call themselves. Whether they call themselves fascist dictators or democratic republic, or democratic republic, ultimately, it is the people prefer to be enslaved. They're much more comfortable to be enslaved than they are to be free, because free is difficult. You're responsible for your own behavior. People don't want to be responsible for their own behavior. They want to be taking their, they want to be able to do whatever they want to do and let somebody else be responsible for their behavior. You got parents? Oh, that's not your concern. Let society take care of your parents. You have children? Well, why should you bother? Let society take care of your children. And that's our society today. We want someone else to bear the responsibility for our actions. And that is what big government likes. Big government wants someone else to be responsible for their actions. Because then they're beholden to government. They're beholden to government. And that's what government wants. Government loves dependency. The system of education exists to guarantee dependency, and making you illiterate, ignorant, compliant, but still able to fill out your Medicaid forms, your welfare forms, and still be able to vote, because you can still make an X. You don't even have to make an X anymore, do you? You just take a little electronic pointer and just point at something that says free food. Vote for me for free food. Vote for me for free health care. Vote for me for free education. Vote for me for free retirement. Vote for me and you'll never have to think again. And so we have Barack Obama, the thinkless man's president. Someone who can't even enunciate an idea without having a teleprompter. And who knows? Exactly right. Who knows who put that stuff on the teleprompter? Not Joe Biden. I don't think he can write. And I have a question. Why does Chuck Schumer and the guy from Alabama, what's the guy's name? Levin, whatever. Why do they think by wearing your glasses low on your nose why do they think that makes you look intelligent?
I don't think that's what they do. I think they need to wear them that low so they can see the smaller print.
No, I don't believe you.
Really?
I don't even think they have lenses in those glasses.
Okay.
Let's take a look at, for example, Charlie Rose. Charlie Rose thinks that he can fool people into believing he's an intellectual by not combing his hair. Right? He doesn't comb his hair, and therefore people think, oh, this guy's an intellectual. And that guy is a blithering idiot. Okay? Or why do people think if you have an English accent that you're smart? Who's that guy on CNN with the English accent, took the place of Larry King?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
So
I can't think of it. We don't watch the show, so yeah.
Yeah. So if someone with they think of someone with an English accent is smart. Well, if they were so smart, why do they live in England? You know, I don't get it. I mean, why do people think because you went to an Ivy League school that you're smart? Why do people think that? I mean,
because that's what Ivy League schools are known as, or discerned, or hey, you went to Princeton, you got to be. But
isn't that where Timothy Geithner came from, Harvard?
Yes.
Oh, I forgot to pay my Social Security.
Yeah, the tax cheat. Yeah.
That guy. What about? I mean, didn't Bill Clinton go to Yale or something?
Yeah.
What about
But I'm
Barack
sure he went on a
Obama? Barack
scholarship,
Obama
right?
went,
He went on a scholarship.
he went on a Soviet scholarship. He went on the Brezhnev pay, steal as you go. What? We have 9 Supreme Court justices. 7 went to Harvard. 2 went to Yale. At least they're bipartisan. I mean, isn't that amazing? I mean, you think people, 7 to Harvard, 2 to Yale. Nobody. I mean, they all live on the Atlantic Ocean, for God's sakes. You think that's representative of the rest of the country? What do you think? I don't. We have I don't know. Do we have all the? Who's this guy? Who's here in Wendy? What's her name? Smith. What's her name?
Davis.
Yeah. Davis, Smith, Jones. What I get? White, blonde, Anglo-Saxon, Harvard-trained abortionist, and they actually think that she's going to become governor of the state of Texas. They think that's a possibility. I mean, here's someone who goes around saying we ought to be killing black and Hispanic children, and the blacks and Hispanics are going to vote for her. Right? That's who's going to vote for her. And what does she say? We need to keep this Planned Parenthood alive because they're killing black and Hispanic children, which is what our founder, Margaret Sanger, wanted to eliminate those that she considered inferior. Black, Hispanics, Jews, and the poor. She said that. So, but we all know that Margaret Sanger is heroine to Hillary Clinton. And all Wendy Davis is the younger Hillary Clinton, isn't she? That's all she is. So she gets to be front runner because she's an abortionist? Is that what happens in this country today? You proclaim that you want to kill a bunch of poor people's children, and then you become the front runner? I don't get it. I don't get it. But the Republicans will find a way to put up somebody so weak that the Mitt Romney or the John McCain. I don't know. Christie, Fat Man Christie.
Krispy Kremes. Yeah.
Am I being insensitive in calling Fat Man the Fat Man?
No, that fat man could mean anything. Doesn't have to mean he's fat.
But he is fat.
Yeah, but doesn't mean that he's just because you call him the fat man doesn't mean he's. Yeah, I know he's fat, but yeah.
He's fat, and the thing about him is he's proud of it. He shows it off. So, is that what the Republican Party represents now? Fat man. What's that song? What was that guy's name? Fat Boy Slim or whatever? Is there someone? Wait, sure there is.
I think there is.
A rocker or something. Not a rocker, a
rapper?
Rapper. A rapper. W-R-A-P-P-E-R? Rapper?
No.
No?
R-A-P-P-E-R.
Oh, R-A-P-P-E-R. Oh, rapper. Fat Boy Slim.
Fat Joe. I know there's a Fat Joe.
I'm pretty sure there's a Fat Boy Slim. And he's probably going to endorse Fat Boy Christie, I would think. Where do people get off thinking that I should be responsible for their parents and their children? I wonder. Where is it considered to be heartless that I expect people to take care of their parents? I mean, that I'm heartless because I want you to take care of your parents. Nothing wrong with you that you don't want to take care of your parents or your children. You want to put them in an institution, let the taxpayer cover their costs. That's okay. But I'm heartless because I want you to be responsible for your actions, for your children, for your parents. Why? Um, why can't Texas secede from the Union? Why can't, I don't understand what, what if the legislature tomorrow said, you know what? We're out of here. We're no longer in this union. We're not interested in being in a country that will allow California and New York as part of it. We don't want to be part of a country. We don't want to be part of a country that has New York and California or Wisconsin in it. I think that would be a good campaign. Because do you really want to have Chuck Schumer representing you? You really want to have Nancy Pelosi representing you? I mean, is that who you would choose? Let's say that you had, why would you want them representing you? I mean, I don't want them representing me. What's that noise? Go to break. Okay, we're back. I think drugs and alcohol were factors in the last election, too. Don't you think? So did we not say 2 years ago or more that the Affordable Care Act would not allow you to keep your health insurance? I mean, it's obvious. I don't understand why people can't figure these things out, which are so obvious. If the only way that an insurance company could belong to the exchange was if they adhered to government dictates, and you couldn't buy insurance unless it belonged to the exchange, then what did you think was going to happen? And what did you think was going to happen? The other thing is, what does insurance have to do with access to health care? Do people without insurance have health care? Sure they do. Do people with insurance still die? Yes. I mean, what kind of stupidity is, does everybody go to public school? Doesn't anyone learn how to think anymore? Doesn't anyone know how to do anything anymore? I mean, how obvious does it need to be? So all you men out there that have now maternity coverage, I hope you're able to use it wisely. So, I don't know. What else should we talk about? I don't know. Just, what's that noise? That's a pretty big fly. The Constitution was created to prevent the government from exerting inappropriate control over the lives of the average American citizen. Now, politicians go into government for one reason and one reason alone, and that is to control your life. Therefore, the Constitution became an inconvenience to the average politician because the Constitution was placing constraints upon the ability of politicians to control your life. And so the way to get around that was to destroy the Constitution, and that's exactly what they did. The government destroyed the Constitution because it was getting in the way of their dictatorial regime. We live in a fascist dictatorship, and that's all there is to it. By definition, the government dictates to every American what he or she may or may not do, and that's it. No one's life is now insulated from the government. The government dictates everything as in your life, as to the kind of food you eat and the car you drive, the road you drive on, the construction of your house, your cell phone, everything. The government controls some aspect of every single endeavor that any American is now involved with. Whether you know it or not, your life is being controlled by some lame-brained bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. And that's all they have over there is a bunch of lame-brained bureaucrats. So it's just astonishing to me how brainwashed the country has become. The my book, which is now available to all those who still read in this country, illustrates and demonstrates the process by which the country has gone from a constitutional republic to a fascist tyranny. It has done so because of the connivance of those in government to pervert and corrupt the intent and meaning of the Constitution to be something other than it was meant to be. If one looks at the way the government functions today, there's no and read the Constitution, would read the Constitution, you would find out that the way the government functions is in no way representative of what the Constitution says. The Constitution strictly limits what the government can do through enumerated powers. And then the Constitution also and the Constitution does not allow the federal government to increase any of its powers beyond those powers that it was given originally. The central government cannot expand in any way. It is prohibited from doing so through the 9th and 10th Amendments of the Constitution. We have Scott calling from Port Isabel. Thanks for calling. Thanks for calling, Scott.
Yeah, Doctor. So I guess George Orwell was right in 1984. We live pretty much in a totalitarian rule of our government nowadays. Except the only thing he got wrong was they used helicopters to spy on those people back in his book and in the movies and everything. But nowadays they use drones.
Well, remember, George Orwell was not living in a vacuum. He didn't create the society of 1984 completely out of his head. He was essentially taking what was occurring in the Soviet Union at the time, and with the Stalinist terror, and then creating a mythologized society where everybody is spied upon, everybody spies upon everybody else, and everybody's under the watchful eye of the government. So it was based upon actual circumstances in the world at the time. Now, of course, in the United States, we are a Stalinist country, and so George Orwell wrote the book. I can't remember. I think it was like 1939 or 1940, somewhere around that time. So, of course, 1984 is already 27 years ago, or 29 years ago. I can't add anymore. 29 years ago. So, but it's, I mean, there are many aspects of what George Orwell was saying back then as to what we find ourselves in this situation now. I mean, what George Orwell was trying to do was he was trying to warn the people of the world what could happen when government becomes all-powerful. But I wonder, Scott, if even, I have to look into this, but I wonder if 1984 is even read anymore in our system of public education.
Well, I've asked some younger people if they've ever read the book, and they said they didn't, and it was pretty mandatory for most people that were born in the 50s and 60s and probably the 70s to read that in high school or junior high school. And a lot of people, they don't even know what I'm talking about when I ask them if they've ever read the book 1984, because it could go worldwide. All the governments to me nowadays are starting to become dictatorships, and it could end up just being worldwide dictatorship of the whole world with each government, and everybody's just ruled by the government, and there is no more freedoms really.
Right. There's no.
I listened to Barack Obama's speech, on the Obamacare. And then I listened to the news reporters ask him some questions, and a couple of guys got pretty deep into some questions, and Obama's kind of on the spot. He had to answer them, and he was still lying to the general public out of his mouth right there in front of everybody, trying to cover up stuff and with more lies. And then he talks about, this is ironic to me, because when you put a sanction on a country like Iran, which he was saying he was going to put some really heavy sanctions on and control their economy and threaten them with this and that, and they don't even know for sure if they're building anything nuclear for sure. They haven't even gotten that far into it with the diplomatic, Kerry's our Secretary of State, so how far are they going to get into it to find out if they really are building anything? And then he threatens with all these heavy sanctions of sanctioning oil and closing off certain waterways and all that. And then I started thinking back, isn't that what we did with Japan? Are we putting ourselves out here for another terrorist attack? And aren't we declaring war on Iran by putting such heavy sanctions on them?
Yes, I mean, it's a warlike act. I mean, if Russia put an embargo on goods going into the United States, that's a warlike act. And you're exactly correct. That's what we did to Japan in order to entice them to attack the United States. So, yeah, the game is pretty clear. We're going to push Syria or push Iran or somebody enough that they'll react and do some kind of belligerent act against the United States, thereby giving Barack Obama the excuse to launch a bunch of missiles and send a bunch of ships up the Gulf or whatever in order to because that's what dictators like to do. Dictators like to kill and control and enslave, and Barack Obama's a dictator if there ever was one. He even looks like a dictator. Yeah, so you're exactly right about that. I mean, I think, if it wasn't for Barack Obama and the Democrat Party yelling and screaming all the time about Iran, I don't think anybody in the United States would even care. I mean, the only time I ever hear about it is when it comes out of Barack Obama's mouth. What do I care if Iran has nuclear weapons? I'm much more concerned about North Korea having nuclear weapons, and nobody's saying anything about taking away their weapons. So I just don't. And
isn't our government still paying off Pakistan just to look the other way and keep their mouths shut and not shoot any nuclear weapons or start any fights or anything? Just paying them billions and billions of dollars each year. In the meantime, Saudi Arabia is still funding a lot of this terrorism that's going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. And what if Iran builds nuclear weapons? I mean, I don't think they're going to waste their whole entire civilization by shooting a couple of nuclear weapons at Israel when they know they'd be completely annihilated off the planet. So it looks like another power play to me, but putting that heavy of sanctions on where their economy's falling 15% each year, they're going to retaliate somewhere. And we're, like you said, that's just going to be another reason for us to stay. We'll end up getting out of Afghanistan in 2014, but we're going to be sitting in the Middle East for the next 20 or 50 years, and it looks like a no-win situation at all.
Well, it's been no win there for 1,000 years already. But let me ask you, if Israel did not have nuclear weapons, would Israel still exist?
No.
Exactly correct. Now, why do we think that Iran, human psychology is human psychology. And I don't know what's going on in the minds of those people in Iran, but it would seem to me that if I'm concerned about attacks from other parts of the world, that it behooves me to have a nuclear weapon. Really, why is North Korea on the map? Why is North Korea of any importance to us? Why do we even discuss? Who talks about Thailand or Burma or anything? Everything's North Korea because they got nuclear weapons. Why is Pakistan not been destroyed by India? Because they have nuclear weapons. So there's a certain logic to a country wanting to have nuclear weapons. Just because they're the enemy, so to speak, doesn't mean their human psychology is distinct from ours. We have nuclear weapons because we don't want to get blown away by the Russians. Maybe Iran wants to have nuclear weapons because they don't feel like getting blown away by who knows. They have been attacked before. They were attacked by Iraq back in the 80s, a war that lasted for 10 years in which hundreds of thousands of both Iraqis and Iranians were killed.
Well, look how many nuclear weapons that France has. France has quite a few nuclear weapons.
Now, yeah, that's a country that needs to be watched carefully.
Yeah.
because that's a country that's run by nuts. And you're exactly correct. I mean, really, it's kind of hypocritical. I mean, we say it's okay for Britain and India and Pakistan and France to have nuclear weapons. We don't. We're not telling them get rid of your nuclear weapons or we're going to eliminate you. But we tell Iran, that why? Here's a question for you. If let's say Scott, okay, do you? When I was going to school, every school has a bully. I think that's like required in the curriculum that every public school has to have a bully in it. And so we had bullies in our school. And the last thing you wanted to do with the bully, you didn't want the bully to see you, right? You didn't, and you certainly were not going to poke fun at the bully, right? Because you didn't want to get your brains beaten out. Now, let me ask you this. All these countries in the world, like Iran and Iraq and all that, which are really kind of pipsqueaks compared to the United States, don't you find it interesting that why would you, as a pipsqueak, want to push around the strongest kid on the block? If you think about it, why would you want to do that? It doesn't make any sense. Why do we have all these little pipsqueak countries? When they blew up the Maine, they blew up the Maine. Why would Spain want to pick a fight with the United States? Why would Korea want to pick a fight with the United States? Why would Vietnam want to pick a fight with the United States? Why would any of these countries really want to pick a fight with the United States? It's not good to your health. But if you look at every one of those situations, it was actually the United States that started it. The United States, which wanted to justify belligerency against whatever other country, and we're doing the same thing today. They
seem to be the instigator all the time.
Well, we are the instigator. Because
we keep our nose out of the Middle East, out of other people's business over there, and mind our own business over here. We wouldn't be worrying about terrorism and all the millions and dollars and billions of dollars we're spending on sitting there in worthless Afghanistan while our young people are getting blown apart, and we're having to be responsible as taxpayers because they're going to be on disability and pensions and everything for the rest of their lives because they're all blown to hell. And we're sitting over there doing nothing while this president's, he's sitting bowing down to guys from Saudi Arabia and sitting there praising this person and that person. And you're absolutely right. North Korea has more nukes than Iran could ever build. And, nobody wants to mess with Israel. They got like 240 nukes. So who wants to mess with a little country like that that's got that many nuclears plus what the U.S. has? So it's all about power with this guy, power, and he's a dictator for power, and that's it. And he thinks it makes him look good by going in there and knocking down these little tiny countries and manipulating the oil and all this. And he's getting payola here and payola there. It's a crime. Guy should be impeached.
Yeah, who's going to impeach him?
Nobody. Nobody. Well, you have to have a 500 Ted Cruz's to be able to pull that off, and I don't think you got any guys over there. Maybe 5 or 6 of them that have any integrity at all to do anything about it.
No, they don't. They're all part of the same big government scam. So the House of Representatives would be required to impeach the president, and John Boehner isn't going to do that. You're not going to impeach the guy you go play golf with all the time. Besides, John Boehner, Michelle Obama is going to have a big birthday party coming up in January, and if John Boehner wants to impeach Barack Obama, he probably is going to get scratched off the invite list. And, John Boehner doesn't want to get scratched off the invite list because he wants to be buddies with Barack Obama. They're all the same, all these characters. They're all in it together. They all belong to the same club. We're just the guys. We either serve them, we're the water boy serving them, or we're outside looking, we're on the outside looking in.
It's all these Harvard and Ivy League colleges all on the Northeast. They all have had these fraternities and sororities and all these little clubs and everything, and they think they're the ruling class, and that's their England right there, and the rest of us are all their servants and peasants, and and when we let them do it, and we throw our money to them, and they waste it away, and it's ridiculous. You're right. It's just like Stalin. It's just like 1984, but in different scenario.
Yes, well, it's this group that believes itself to be superior to the rest of us, the elitists, those who believe in their innate superiority, and that they have the right and even the obligation to control the lives of others. And I remember when Eleanor Kagan gave her address at the graduation at Harvard Law School a few years back, which I attended, and no bones about it, she believes that those people going to Harvard and the Ivy League have a God-given responsibility to manage your life and my life, because we don't have the brain power to do it, you see. Only they do. The exalted few that have joined the club. They belong to part of that club of elitists that's international. I mean, it's all over the world, the same little group of elitists that think that they are smarter than the rest of us, even though all evidence is to the contrary, as we watch them destroy the economies of every single country and have a bunch of people blown up and killed. But they still, despite all evidence to the contrary, they still believe themselves to be smarter than the rest of us. And Eleanor Kagan said that at the meeting, that you are the future leaders, not only in law, but also in everything else in American life. And they believe that. They actually believe that they're smarter than we are. That's why the Supreme Court behaves the way it does. They actually believe that they understand the Constitution better than the rest of us. We're not smart enough to understand the Constitution. See, they are the priestly class. They're the only ones who really understand the Constitution, and they'll tell us what the Constitution means. We may think we understand it, but it's because it's our own ignorance that makes us believe that we understand the Constitution. We're not smart enough. Only they understand the Constitution. They're going to dictate to us what the Constitution means, no matter what we might think it means.
Yeah, and they start brainwashing it with the federal government in our public school systems. When the kids start the pre-grade schools all the way from 1st to 12th grade, and they brainwash us until at the end, that's exactly how we feel. Unless we are smart enough to read other books and think for ourselves outside the box, because they got us trapped inside the box.
Right, but even if you do that, they won't let you play the game. In other words, you could be, okay, Scott, you could be the smartest guy in the world, but if you don't have a Harvard, Yale, or something degree, there are places, don't apply. You want to be Secretary of the Treasury of the United States? Do not apply. You want to be on the Supreme Court? Do not apply. They won't even they won't even give you a chance. You want to go to work for some high-powered law firm in New York or Washington? Do not apply. We don't care if you're the smartest guy in the world. If you don't have the pedigree, that aristocratic pedigree, do not apply. And that's the way they feel. So they don't even give you a chance.
Well, that's socialism, and that's the road we're headed, especially with the president we have right now, and the liberals and the Democrats running the country. And that's how it's going to be for a while.
It's getting worse.
We can survive it, it will change. But right now, that's the path we're headed.
But it's getting worse.
Well, it's not going to get better. I mean, it's going to get worse, and it may get so bad everything breaks up. But then again, we may survive it. But it's going to be real tough, because we're definitely getting our foot into more and more hot water with the presidents and with the idiots we have running the country right now.
But nothing ever happens to them. It doesn't matter, these guys, George Bush, terrible president, he's out there having a good old time. George H.W. Bush, who destroyed the Reagan Revolution, he's having a good old time. These guys are not even responsible for their actions. Barack Obama will be gone in 3 years. He'll be living the high life, just like Bill Clinton is leading the high life today. It doesn't matter that he mucked up our society and destroyed our economy. It doesn't matter that he created a situation which allows us to be attacked by terrorists. It doesn't matter to him.
Because nobody's going to do anything about it, because everybody that would have anything to do about it are all his buddies, and we're in on it in the first place, and they're not going to prosecute each other, so that's how it goes. And we can't do anything about it because, like you said, the Supreme Court's a bunch of irresponsible, narcissist people that think they're God, and they make their own rules as they think it goes by, not by what the Constitution says, but what they think their constitution. They have their own constitution. They're so narcissistic. They're brainwashed themselves. So
right, they think,
and they all follow each other like little sheep.
They think they personify the Constitution. That's exactly right, and we're just dictated to from Mount High. Okay, nobody cares. They don't bother to explain why anything that they do. They just tell us this is the way it is, and you better accept it because we're smarter than you, and that's all there is to it. And if you don't understand that we're smarter than you, that's because you're too stupid to understand that we're smarter than you. So, okay, Scott. Well, thanks for allowing me to take another call here. Thanks for calling. So now we have John. I guess that's the button for John. Thanks for calling, John. What's your 710 KURV?
My point, Woodrow Wilson had sheep on the White House lawn, created the League of Nations, which eventually became the UN. The UN has been a worthless body that we support, and the UN got us into Korea, and that ended up in a stalemate. Technically, we're still at war with Korea because the peace treaty was never signed.
Yeah.
And then you go back to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the dictatorship he ran, and Harry Hopkins, and the Marshall Plan, rebuild all these countries that we destroyed. We got, first we destroy them, then we rebuild them.
Well, basically, the Marshall Plan was to give the Eastern Europe to the Soviet Union. Was essentially what the Marshall Plan was.
Exactly what it was. And Joseph Stalin gobbled everything up to East Germany, and then you had to do the Berlin airlift.
Right, and amazingly enough, that our friends, the Soviet Union, blockaded West Berlin, which is sitting in East Germany. Berlin is sitting in East Germany, so that East Germany surrounded Berlin. Berlin was divided in half, well, actually in 4 parts, and West Berlin was where the United States was. So the Soviets blockaded Berlin. Eisenhower should have just blown the Soviets to Kingdom Come, but instead we chickened out and used an airlift. So that was stupidity. I mean, but the United States is just, Franklin Roosevelt was a fascist and a communist. He was a pro-Stalinist, and for a while he was pro-Nazi. The only reason he didn't stay pro-Nazi was because the Nazis attacked Stalin, and Roosevelt was more a Stalinist than a fascist. So that's why he went to the aid of Stalin. That's the only reason he went to World War II, was to save Stalin from being destroyed by the Nazis. Anything else? Oh, we got to go. Okay, John, we got to go. Thanks for calling. Be back after the next hour. Thanks. (710) KRV Talkback. Dr. Lawrence Gelman holding the iron microphone. You want to know how dumb the Republicans are? This is how dumb. It's amazing to me in a country like this that people believe Hillary Clinton is intelligent and that she's the front runner, or at least one of the front runners, for the Democratic nomination for president. To me, it's astonishing. Here's someone who's proven herself to be a failure in everything she's ever done. And she's getting uglier by the day. Speaking of ugly, Elizabeth Warren.
Don't get personal, come on.
She's not a good person. She's a bad person.
No, yeah, but don't get personal.
She's not ugly? She's better looking than Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren looks like that guy from Levin. What's the guy's name from Alabama?
No, he's from Michigan.
Michigan?
Yeah.
What's his name?
Levin. His name is Levin, yeah.
That guy. Elizabeth Warren looks like him. You know, she wears glasses. She wears her glasses like on the end of her nose. Anyway, so the Republicans apparently believe that Elizabeth Warren will be easier to defeat than Hillary Clinton, which may or may not be true. But the last thing, but if you believe that, Don't say it, you idiot. I mean, don't go out there and say, Republican National Committee spokeswoman Kristen Kukowski tells Fox News, we'd welcome Elizabeth Warren to the race because she'd be easier to beat. She's having a liberal left-wing candidate like Senator Warren makes running much easier for any Republican candidate because the public will view her as extreme. Okay, maybe true, but you don't say that. You don't say that. I mean, you don't give Hillary Clinton the ammunition to say, yes, Elizabeth Warren was endorsed by the Republican Party. Give me a break. Are the Republicans really that stupid? I guess they must be. Where does this stuff? Elizabeth Warren, she's a senator of Massachusetts. She's a communist. Hillary Clinton is a fascist. Not much difference between the two of them, actually. So Elizabeth Warren, I mean, where do they find these people? I get so sick and tired of the media based in New York and Washington and telling us, coming up with this stuff with their little microcosm of the world view, and that everything revolves around the East Coast. I mean, why? We need to leave the Union. Texas needs to leave the Union. We do not want to be run by people like Hillary Clinton and Elizabeth Warren. We don't want to be run by people we don't want a Supreme Court with 7 justices from Harvard and 2 from Yale. That's not what we want. We want our lives to be run by Texans, not by communists and fascists in Washington, D.C., New York City, and Los Angeles. If I'm elected governor, if I'm the elected governor, I will pull Texas out of the Union.
Is this your announcing your candidacy for governor?
I'm announcing my candidacy for secessionist leader.
Secessionist.
Yes, secessionist. We will leave. I will leave. What would I would do as governor? What would the first thing I would as governor? The first thing I would do is eliminate Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps.
Whoa! Wait a minute! Don't get so drastic. Come on.
And what will happen? The first thing that will happen is every Democrat will leave the state. Right?
Maybe.
Most of them will. Because most people on Medicaid and Social Security, most people on Medicaid and food stamps are Democrats. Don't tell me that's not true. So by eliminating those programs, we eliminate the Democrat population and we become a state filled with people who work for a living. And then we secede from the Union. And that's it. That's the end of it. And that's what I want to do. I want to secede from the Union. Ted in McAllen. Okay, 710. Ted in McAllen. 710 KRB. Thanks for calling.
Yes, sir. I'll join your secession group. But what I want to talk about is nobody ever mentions Sandy Berger and what he did and how that he stole
those documents. Yeah.
And they didn't do anything to him.
Well, no, he's a Democrat.
Yeah, but Bush was the president.
Well, Bush is
when all that happened, and they could have prosecuted him, and all they did, I think he got a slap on the wrist. And the last I heard, he was an advisor to Hillary Clinton.
Well, I'm sure he is. I mean, here's somebody who can steal documents in his socks and get away with it.
Yeah, I mean that just shows you how you were talking about earlier about how these politicians take care of their own,
Well, sure. They all do. I mean, look, you have Bill Clinton and George Bush rolling around the country together, arm in arm, kissing each other. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get married. It's just well, if you'd marry Hillary Clinton, you'll marry George Bush. I mean, good grief.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for calling. But that's exactly right. They all protect. I mean, Sandy Berger should be in jail. In fact, he should be guillotined. I mean, that's all. He's not the only one. I mean, Bernie Madoff should be shot. You know why he's not shot? Because he's a Democrat. People forget that. Bernie Madoff is a Democrat. Why are you shaking your head, Fred? He is a Democrat. What about Robert Rubin? bankrupted 2 companies, Goldman Sachs and Citicorp. He's still an honored guest and very wealthy. No, in the inner circle, nobody will touch you. You
become untouchable, yeah.
You become untouchable. Unlike you and me, people can't keep their hands, they keep on throwing us in jail all the time. So there you have the Republican Party. That's talking about really being stupid. Elizabeth Warren. What the heck? Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, Mitt Romney. They're all from, these little useless northeastern states. And we get, Bloomberg, Schumer, Cuomo. Who's the new governor? Who's the new mayor of New York? De Blasio. I never heard of him.
Apparently, he took some communist money or something. Or he helped the communists in the 80s or 90s or something.
Yeah, he's a communist. That's why he was elected.
Well, they're saying it was going to get worse in New York.
It already is getting worse in New York.
Well, it's already bad, yeah, but it might get worse.
It's already, it's gone. People don't remember what New York used to be like when it was the murder capital of the world and the graffiti capital of the world. It's going to go back to that. So couldn't happen to another nicer group of people. What was I looking at over here? Massachusetts liberal Hillary Clinton's in the race. She is 0-0. If Hillary helped Elizabeth Warren, are you crazy? What the heck? What did it say about she claimed to be part Indian, right? Elizabeth Warren claimed to be part Indian, Native American, and of course she's a liar, like most Democrats are liars. But they believe, but they're liars. I mean, that's all there is. Democrat is a liar until proven otherwise. Anyway, she apparently she claimed to be part Indian. I'm not sure if that was the Cleveland Indians or the Washington Redskins. Which Indian did she belong to? The Cleveland Indians or the Washington Redskins? But that's not as much Indian as these people need to be locked up. They all need to be locked up, and the key thrown away. So, what else did I talk about?
Are we going to see Ted Cruz announce that he's going to be running, and then for the president, and then is the Republican Party going to even back him up?
Whether I don't know if he's going to run or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, he should run.
The Republican Party, I can't imagine John McCain supporting him, or Mitt Romney, or George Bush. The Republicans, who do Republicans? The Republicans will put up. I think the Republicans are going to put up Elizabeth Warren. I think that's who they're going to. No, you don't think so? They seem to like her. The Republicans will put up. They'll find Bob Dole. Mitch McConnell, Sandy Berger. No, that's who they'll put up. They'll put up somebody like they'll put up another Mitt Romney and a John McCain. They'll pick up they'll put in there 2 of the worst candidates they can possibly find. Yeah, John McCain, a loser, married into wealth, a failed son, a failed warrior, and a terrible senator. Or they put up Mitt Romney, who was Obamacare before Obama was president. Mitt Romney. So what kind of a name is that anyway? So Mitt Romney, what kind of name is that? Talk about, where do they find these people? I just don't get it. Is there nobody that we can find to run as president? What's the point of it anyway? I mean, it's a country club environment. They're all insiders. They all are alienated from the principles of the founding of the nation. They're all alienated from anything of any from the American core. They don't know the Constitution. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't understand about the Constitution. They don't understand about the Declaration of Independence. They don't understand. They don't care to understand. They're elitists who believe that they should be in charge because they were born to be in charge. They're just a bunch of elitist people born with silver or gold spoons in their mouths. That's all they are. That's all they are. And they won't go away. You have George H.W. Bush and then his son. You have the Kennedys, one after the other. You have Clinton, now they have his wife. I mean, they have the wife. I mean, these people will not go away.
Yeah.
They don't have the decency to leave the stage. You can't get rid of them. They won't leave you alone. The Jimmy and Rosalind Carter Vaudevillian Act remains to this day, traipsing around the country, dictating their morality to the rest of us. It's unbelievable. These people will not go away. The Cuomos, the Dingles, the Kennedys, they will not go away. What does it take to make these people go away and leave us alone? But I guess they consider themselves God's gift to mankind. They think there's some kind of aristocracy. Speaking of that, when is the Queen Elizabeth going to go away and take the rest of her troop with her? Close down Buckingham Palace. Blow it up. Blow up Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle. Get rid of all that stuff. Why are you shaking your head?
Because it's not up to us. It's up to the English people.
Oh, yeah?
And they're represented at the House of Commons, right?
A House of Commoners?
That's what it's called.
I don't know. Freedom is hard. You have to be responsible for your actions. People would prefer not to be responsible for their actions. They would prefer that somebody else be responsible for their actions. I'm not interested in being responsible for somebody else's actions, just my own. So it's a sad commentary on human nature. That's just the way we want to be. That's just the way we are. We were a country created on the principle of individual liberty, freedom, and independence. And those are things which many, many people are afraid of. They're afraid of being unprotected by government. People prefer to be slaves. People prefer to be slaves. You can be a slave without being shackled, without being chained to a wall. Slaves on the plantation were not chained. They wandered about the plantation freely. Of course, if they tried to leave the plantation, they were treated severely. But as long as they stayed on the plantation, they were, they got what they needed to have to live. They got their food, their shelter, their clothing. They were allowed to procreate and produce more of the same kind. And that's just simply the way it was. Today, we live on the plantation set up for us, and we are live on that, accepting our food stamps and accepting our aid to dependent children, our government subsidies, and our Medicaid and our Medicare and our Social Security check and our system of public education. And we accept all that. We accept, and that's being enslaved. Of course, it's being enslaved. But we prefer that than to have to accept the responsibilities of our actions, to produce our own goods or to pay for our own goods. We'd much rather someone else pay our way. Be responsible for ourselves. Be responsible for our parents. Be responsible for our children. Much easier to do that. Much easier. Much more. Much easier to do that. And then, of course, you set up, and then all I have to do is vote in that person who promises to make sure that I get my food stamps, that I get my government subsidy check, and I get my Medicare, and I get my Medicaid, and my public education, and my Social Security, and all I have to do is give up some of my freedoms, no problem. Who? Jason. Okay, we have Jason McAllen, 7 KRV. Thanks for calling.
Hi, Dr. Gelman. We got the 50-year anniversary of the JFK assassination this week.
That's right.
What is your opinion on that coup d'etat that took place?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean exactly. I do believe that the government or agents of the government were responsible for the assassination. I don't think Kennedy was a particularly good president, but I don't know.
You think LBJ was behind it?
No.
No.
I mean, look, I'm just guessing off the top of my head. Look, I think there's no question that there was more than one shooter. No one brings up the point. They all talk about a second shooter on the grassy knoll or somewhere else. There could have been 2 or 3 shooters right there in the 6th floor deposit. Where the bookstore, whatever bookstore depository. I mean, why does no one consider the possibility of more than one shooter from that same window?
Yeah, because it ruins the government official story.
But why do you suppose they wanted him killed?
Well, they definitely had a motive with escalation in Vietnam, his promise to take down organized crime. We had the Bay of Pigs fiasco. I think a lot of the people in the intelligence agencies probably wanted him out.
Well,
but the point is the official story is not correct.
Well, that's not what's rare about that? The official story
on 9/11.
Yeah.
That official story is bull. Oklahoma City. That story is bull.
What do you think happened there?
That was an inside job.
But what was the purpose of it?
To crack down on the militias and conservative groups. Eric Holder was behind that.
Okay. Now, I believe all these things are set up by the federal government. What I don't believe.
You're listening to the 5.
What I don't what I don't believe is the federal government was directly involved in the destruction. What I believe, they set up the environment which pretty much guaranteed those events would occur, and they did so in order to further their own agenda. I do believe that. Now, with the Kennedy assassination, I know it can't be the way they said, because what I don't understand, why no one has done proper studies. Like, for example, supposedly the bullet that went through Kennedy's neck, the first shot,
right.
or the first shot that hit Kennedy went through his neck, was the same bullet that hit Connolly in the shoulder, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the film, you'll notice, now, I'm not 100% sure, but it should have, I don't know why they don't do this study. Kennedy reaches up to his neck because of the impact of the bullet, right? You get shot. Of course, by the time Kennedy reaches for his neck, the bullet is already through, because we can't respond as fast as a bullet can fly. Now, if you look at the film, there's a Bruder film or whatever. You look at the film, you see that Connolly, at the same time that John Kennedy is reaching for his neck, Connolly is turning around to look at Kennedy. Now, that same bullet is the one that hit Connolly. Now, I suspect that at the moment, by the time that Kennedy is reaching for his neck, Connolly must have already been hit. And so it makes no sense to me that Connolly is turning, because by that time he should have felt the bullet should have hit his shoulder, and he should have been responding to the bullet, because the bullet goes so fast. There's no possible way that Connolly would not have felt the impact of the bullet by the time that Kennedy is reaching for his neck, which means to me that there was the bullet that hit Connolly was a different bullet, right. Okay, so that there was, now they had to somehow justify, and there was no way that Connolly could have been hit by a second bullet by a reloading of Oswald's firearm. Okay, it would have taken too long for Oswald to reload to have hit Connolly at the time that he was hit. So they had to
with a bolt action rifle.
Right, with a bolt action rifle. So the only way they could justify that was by saying there was the same bullet that hit Kennedy, hit Connolly. I know that's garbage. Right off the bat, I know that's garbage.
Yeah.
I think that, first of all, I don't think Oswald, first of all, that wasn't the rifle. No way that was the rifle. Because look, if let's say I'm Oswald. Okay, let's say I'm Oswald, and I'm planning to kill the president. Now, Oswald prepared, right? He got himself, first of all, he had to know the route, right?
Right.
So he had to prepare for what was going on. So he's not a complete idiot. Now, if you are out there to kill the president or anybody else, are you going to use is that the kind of gun you're going to get? Or are you going to try to get something a little bit more sophisticated, right? Okay, so that's not the gun you're going to get. Now, if that's the perfect spot to get, so Oswald had to figure out the perfect place to do the shooting. So if I were involved in that, I would have at least 2 shooters in that window. At least 2, if not, and someone else elsewhere as well. I would not be using that rifle. I'd be using a different rifle. It's just 2. Now, here's another thing. Let's say you're the shooter. Are you going to leave the rifle right there? No, you're not. You're going to do something that you're going to get rid of it somehow. You're going to get rid of whatever evidence you can of that rifle. So, they go up there and they find the rifle right there. That's complete nonsense.
Oswald was a patsy.
That's what he said himself. And the fact that he was killed, give me a break. They made sure, they couldn't have taken a more easier route for assassin. Let's think of it for a second. Why was Ruby even allowed to be in that underground garage? Why was anyone allowed to be there? Come on, the whole thing's been okay. Now, all right. So there's no 2 ways about it that Kennedy was killed, other than what they say. Now, the question is, why was Kennedy killed? And I'm going to tell you what my take on it is. I look at the Bay of Pigs, and to me, the Bay of Pigs proved to Kennedy that the government was infiltrated by communists, because remember, the United States double-crossed the Cuban freedom fighters. They double-crossed them. And the United States is full of communist agents. What were his advisors? Dean Acheson and a bunch of other communists, okay? So I think what Kennedy got burned really bad with that. I think Kennedy figured out that the CIA was infiltrated with communists, because they're the ones who double-crossed the Bay of Pigs. And I think he was going to expose...
Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex before he left office.
Well, nobody shot Eisenhower, and I'm not sure what the military-industrial complex exactly is. I prefer to think that as more of a communist-inspired plot.
Well, the intelligence agencies are definitely part of that.
Now, his wife, Oswald's wife, was the daughter of a high-ranking Soviet military man. A high-ranking, think about it for a second. If you're a high-ranking Soviet in the military, he was at least a major, maybe high-ranking in the intelligence service. Would you allow your daughter to marry a bum like Oswald? Think about that for a second. Does that make any sense to you? No. Makes no sense to me either. So the whole story is a bit fishy. But let me just tell you this. If I disappear in the next couple of hours, I think we've got more proof. But I think what Kennedy was going to do was weed out the communists in the government, and I think they're the ones who eliminated them. That's what I think.
Sure, and then LBJ lied about the Gulf of Tonkin attack to escalate the war. That's been declassified now.
And we're surprised about that. The government lies to us on a daily basis about everything. To justify us going to war requires nothing but a pack of lies. I have to go to a break. Thanks for calling. 7 KRV, TalkBack. Dr. Lawrence Gelman will be back after this break. But the government lies to us all the time. So, and the government is full of a bunch of fascists and communists. What's the surprise there? The Soviet Union could not have survived without the United States supporting it for 50 years. Be back after this break. Okay, we're back. 7 KRV, TalkBack. Who were they? Who were the Diem brothers? Kennedy had the Diem brothers assassinated in Vietnam, and I know they were a high. I'm not sure why he had them killed. I'm not sure. You look that up real quick. Let's say here, the day before. The Kennedy and his Robert Kennedy had the Diem brothers killed. I think it was. My impression is it was in order to get them out of the way so that they could go to war, so that the war could go on in Vietnam. But let's not paint Kennedy into something other than he wasn't. He certainly was no saint. I think Kennedy wanted us in Vietnam as much as anybody else did, and he's certainly involved in the murder of the Diem brothers. I don't think there's any question about that. So I think what happened to Kennedy was due to the fiasco in the Bay of Pigs, when he came to realize that the CIA was full of communist agents. And I mean, if you think about it for a second, here you train these Cuban freedom fighters, and then you promise to give them air support and other support. You drop them on the beaches of communist Cuba, and then you abandon them. Is that that's what Kennedy did? Okay, look, you change your mind about invading Cuba, okay, but you don't take 1,500 or 2,000 Cuban freedom fighters, drop them on the beaches of Cuba, and then abandon them after you've promised you're going to support them. That's what Democrats do. I understand, the same way we abandoned South Vietnam, and the same way they abandoned the Tutsis in Rwanda and many other places. I know that's what Democrats do: abandon our friends and sell out the country and sell out the innocents. I understand that, but that they do that. Obviously, I don't agree with it, but I'm well aware of it. But so I think that's why Kennedy was killed. But it is what it is. This is a rotten bunch of people. The Kennedys, the Clintons, the Barack Obamas, the Bushes. These are basically bad people. They're an aristocracy. To consider themselves an aristocracy, these are bad people that want to control your lives and really don't care too much how many people get killed in the process. So these are bad people, but people, populations are enamored with bad people. People are enamored with kings and queens and others that cause mayhem and murder, and these are the people that we remember and we build statues to for some reason or other. That's what we do. I don't understand why proper scientific studies have never been done about the assassination, which I think would be conclusive evidence that Oswald could not have been a sole shooter. But what the heck? That's. I think they have this thing going on now, killing of Kennedy or something. I don't even watch it. I think it's usually going to be the usual nonsense of cover-up. So I don't even why watch that garbage. Those who go in government are dishonest people. They tend to be low moral character. They tend to be arrogant. They tend to be self-centered, plunderers. That's people go into government. That's the kind of people that they are. So, you want your health care managed by those kinds of people, then that should be your prerogative. But why am I forced to be in Barack Obama's health care program? I don't want to be in Barack Obama's health care program. I don't think he knows what he's doing. I don't think he's an honest guy. I think he's a dishonest guy. I'm really not interested. But Barack Obama sets up this government health care program, and he's going to be gone in 2 or 3 years, and the rest of us are going to be stuck with that stupid program. We're going to be stuck with it. And our children are going to be stuck with it, and our grandchildren are going to be stuck with it. Like the same way we're stuck with Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. Why is Social Security not voluntary? Why is Medicare not voluntary? Who would belong? Why? Because nobody would belong to it. And if it's so great, why would nobody belong to it? And if it's so great, why isn't it voluntary? I mean, if it's something so great, why isn't it voluntary? Because everybody knows that it's a bunch of garbage. That it's corrupt, that it's inefficient. Everybody knows that. That's why nobody belongs to that. Would belong to it. That's why it's involuntary. Why doesn't anybody ask these questions? If Medicare is such a great program, why is it involuntary? If Social Security is such a great program, why is it involuntary? If Medicaid is such a great program, why is it involuntary? Why are all these things involuntary if they're so great? Because they're not great. Because they're government scams. Because they exist to empower and enrich government. That's why they exist. Not to help the American people. Not to make things better for us. Not to adhere to constitutional principles. Those programs exist to empower and aggrandize and enrich government and those who are in government. And that's the only reason that it exists. And for no other reason do these programs exist other than to enrich government. So, the public schools exist to indoctrinate you, to make you believe that government is good and necessary and benevolent, when it is none of that. These things exist to these programs exist to aggrandize government. The system of public education does not exist to educate. It exists to create a class of skillless illiterates that will be forever dependent upon government. Food stamps exist to enrich the agricultural interests and to keep people enslaved. Social Security and Medicare exist to enrich entrenched interests with political influence and to keep people enslaved. Social Security exists for that reason. Medicaid exists for that reason. The Affordable Care Act was created for no other reason than to keep people enslaved to the government. The media is full of useful dupes and fellow travelers who are nothing but peons for the government. Dan Rather, Walter Cronkite, Katie Couric, and all the rest are nothing but low-level intellects that are pawns and puppets of the government. That's all they are. That's all this is all about. Anyone who reads the Constitution and Declaration of Independence would soon come to realize that the country that we live in today in no way resemble the country that our founding fathers had envisioned. That we are not a country of individuals who are free and independent. We are a country of those in a group who are enslaved and shackled to government welfare. And some of us, some are wealthy and some are poor, but regardless, the vast majority of the country is chained to government welfare programs in one form or another. And these programs exist exactly for that reason, to enchain you to the government welfare, the government control, so that you will continue to vote for big government, because government is the one that provides you with your food and your clothing and your transportation and your health care. And so in order to keep getting your free food, health care, and all the rest, you will keep voting in the politicians that gave these benefits to you, regardless of the burden that it places upon the productive class, and regardless of the fact that it impoverishes the entire nation. It doesn't seem that as long as you can get your Twinkies and your Coke and your beer and watch your soccer games, then you're satisfied. As long as you can get your bread and circus, regardless that at the cost of your freedom, then you're satisfied. And unfortunately, the majority of the American population today is satisfied with being enslaved as long as they can get their Twinkies and beer and watch their soccer games on Sunday. And that's all the system is. That's all it's created to do, and that's all that it ever does. And that's what all these systems ever do, is that they exist to aggrandize the elite, or the so-called elite, in government, or other institutions which are populated by elitists, whether they're the elite universities or any other elite segment of society that somehow believe that they were born to be in control of the lives of others. And that's all the government is. So, and that's the way it's always been, and that's the way it is in every country in the world. I mean, it staggers the imagination. Why we assume or believe that most governments in the world are corrupt. Why would we think that our government is not? We believe most politicians lie, cheat, and are dishonest. But somehow we believe our politicians are not, or at least we behave in a way that makes it appear that we believe them to be on the whole legitimate, when on the whole they are illegitimate. I guess there's something about human psychology that makes us believe a certain way, that makes us want to remain forever ensconced in the protection of the womb. That's the way that we are as human beings. And so if the government tells you that they're going to protect you, make sure you have minimum clothing, minimum food, minimum health care, minimum education, that rather than risking getting something better, you are perfectly willing to accept the minimum to sustain you, rather than have to go out there and earn it on your own. And the government creates a system of positive reinforcement in which those who won't work are benefited, those who have children out of wedlock are benefited, that those who refuse to be educated are benefited, and that those who want to work are punished. So they create a system of positive and negative reinforcement which incentivizes individuals not to work and disincentivizes individuals from working. Because the more people that don't work, the more power the government has. The more people on food stamps, the more power the government has. The more people in public school system, the more power the government has. That is a system that has been created. And that is nothing new. That is something as old as government and as civilization has ever been. That's as old as that. That's the way it's always been. And apparently that's the way it's always going to be. Our forefathers understood that, which was why they created the Constitution, a document to overcome the foibles and weaknesses of the average individual, which are magnified in your average politician. Those evils of arrogance and ignorance, of sloth, of gluttony, pride and wrath, greed, which politicians have an excessive level of, in order to prevent that from manifesting itself, we have a Constitution. And a Constitution which exists to prevent government and politicians from behaving the way that their natural inclinations dictate that they would behave. Which line? Okay, Eddie from San Benito, 7th and KRV, thanks for calling.
Thank you, Dr. Gelman. I really enjoy your show.
Thanks.
First of all, the American Revolution, we fought the American Revolution because we wanted to separate from a monarchy, correct?
Yes.
And right now that's exactly what we have.
Yes, it is,
monarchy. the president is still a monarchy.
That's right. He's a monarchy. It's a monarch. And but the question arises, I guess, why do people want to have a king? I mean, that's what they want. That's why there are kings, because people want kings, and that's why our president is a king, because the people want him to be a king. Why do people feel a need to have a king in their lives?
Correct. So we're no better off than we were back then under the rule of England, really.
No, we're actually worse off, because our government pretends to be a government of a constitutional republic. So people are fooled into believing, because we call the leader a president instead of a king, we actually think he's the leader of a constitutional republic. But you're exactly correct. He's actually a king. So we're actually worse off, because at least back then the king called himself a king, and then we knew what we were dealing with. Now we have a king that calls himself a president, and people get confused. Anything else?
No, thank you, Dr. Gelman. I just think, I strongly believe we need people like you up there in government.
Yeah, well, that's not likely.
You'll never run. You'll never survive.
That's right. I wouldn't survive.
but we need good people like you, intelligent politicians like you.
Okay. Well, I wish
that would come true.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And no, it's not a question of not running. It's a question of not surviving. There's no two ways about it. I would get pulverized by these incumbents and all that there. So anyway, thanks for calling. Appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words. I guess the question arises is it natural psychology to want to remain in the womb, to have a king, to be protected? I mean, despite all the nasty things they do by sending you off to war and stealing your money, stealing what you earn, and giving it to people who don't earn it, why we feel the necessity to have a government? Why we need to have a government? That's the question. Why we need to have a king? Is that something that we're made to believe to be true? Is it something that we're indoctrinated or brainwashed into believing that is necessary? Or is it something that's natural to us? I guess if you live in the animal kingdom, there's a hierarchy, a pecking order, usually based upon physical strength and ability, I guess. And so maybe that's the natural order of things, that we yearn to have somebody to manage our lives. And if that's the case, then I guess we'll never be free of dictators. We'll never be free of kings. I think all we can do now, these days, in my mind, is that you can only live one generation at a time. I mean, the future will take care of itself. Today, we need to eliminate this aristocracy that's called our government, in order to create an environment, at least even if you know for sure that eventually we will revert back to a fascist dictatorship. I think that's the problem for the future to handle. Let us take care of ourselves. Let us leave the Union and become independent and free of the Northeastern Anglo-Saxon dictatorship, Anglo-Saxon elitism that makes them believe that these white people in the Northeast, or their lackeys or their toadies like Barack Obama, that the Northeastern white establishment, that we do not want to live under their rules, that we do not want to live under their elitist way of looking at things, that we believe that each person ought to be free to manifest each one's own destiny, that we believe that we should be free of the encumbrance of having to be forced to shoulder the responsibility of other people, of taking care of other people's parents and children, that we only want to be responsible for our own lives. And we don't want government taking from us to give to others so that government can get a vote, or that a politician can get a vote. We are not interested in that. And that I believe that every state should be free and independent, and our state of Texas ought to be free and independent of Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. We're not interested in being controlled by Rahm Emanuel. We're not interested in being controlled by de Blasio or Mario Cuomo. I have no interest in Bloomberg. I think his television program stinks, by the way. And I'm not interested in having my life dictated to by Bloomberg or by Barack Obama or Michelle Obama or George Bush or John McCain or Nancy Pelosi or any other second-rate intellect that thinks that they're smarter than I am, because they're certainly not smarter than I am, and they're not smarter than anyone else that I know either. In fact, they tend to be much worse than anyone else. So, but of course, they've got the big guns, but the fact of the matter is that this country is a fascist dictatorship. It is not a constitutional republic as it was meant to be. And that anyone who reads the Constitution and Declaration of Independence will soon realize that we are not what our forefathers envisioned us to be. So that's it for this Saturday. 7 on KRB, TalkBack, Dr. Lawrence Gelman, home of the Iron Microphone, spreading the truth to those who are willing to accept it, and maybe shaking the ground a little bit for those who are not willing to accept the truth. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.